to the MSTieCast. I'm your host, Toby Mobius, and joining me is my cohort, Justin Toner.
Hey people, how you doing?
Well, in this installment, we have some very interesting news to share with you before we get to anything else. First of all, is that by the time this episode is released, Kevin Murphy's book, A Year at the Movies, will be re-released in ebook form. That goes out, I believe, Tuesday, May 14th.
Yeah.
So by the time this episode comes out, which we come out on Wednesdays, it should be already available on Amazon Books, on the Google Play Store, iTunes, all those fun places where you can buy ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall correctly, it will have a new foreword written by Kevin. Otherwise, it's the exact same book it was, where he details going to a movie every day for the year of 2001. He goes to a theater made of ice and a hotel made of ice in Quebec, the world's smallest movie theater in Australia. Justin, have you read the book?
No, I have not. I've heard a lot about it. I'd like to get a copy, but like you can get some used ones cheap apparently from Amazon. But it's just only going to be available on Kindle the reissue, or is it eventually going to be like back out in like paperback?
This one is ebook only, but it isn't just for Kindle. You can pretty much use any e-reader. You can read it on your computer with the Kindle Reader. So,
okay.
If you buy it for Kindle.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't have a Kindle, so I was just curious.
I have a cheapo Android tablet that I can read it on, or I can read it on my phone, which has the Kindle app on it.
I think mine has it, because I have a Verizon with Android, and it has a Kindle app on it.
Well, if you don't, you can get it on the Play Store, and there's other ebook readers as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you can buy the book there as well, I believe.
Awesome. Because I've heard a lot of neat things about that book, and I remember Kevin talking about it in his life after MST3K on one of the DVD sets. He was talking about the experience of doing that, and it sounded like he had a lot of fun doing that.
Mm-hmm. Again, highly recommended read. I don't know how much it'll cost, probably only a few dollars. Mike Nelson's movie Mega Cheese is also available for ebooks. The only other bit of news, Jean Jackson, who sadly passed away a while back, her family has decided that her original paintings and some other items should go to the Mystery Science Theater fans who enjoy them most. And they've set up a charity auction where you can get DVDs of MST3K movies, some of them unopened, and full-size props of Crow, Gypsy, and Servo in the auction. Movies will vary from $3 to $75. Props go from $50 to $150, and the base price for all paintings is $250. All proceeds will go to the St. Joseph Church in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a little bit extra cash and you want to support that charity, please do so, and I will include a link in the show notes where you can check out the auction.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome thing they're doing there. I was reading about that just again the other day on Satellite News. Yeah, it's like right at the top of the page for people who fans out there who go to Satellite News. It's right at the top of the Satellite News page right now with a link.
If I could afford it, I would get Forrest, which is I believe my favorite of her paintings.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of Dr. Forrester and the Satellite of Love is up in the top. I believe it might be based on a tarot card. I don't know. It's really nice, and I would love it.
Hmm.
But going on to our main event, so to speak. I believe it was last weekend, correct?
Yes, it was.
You got to experience something that I have dreamed about. Tell us what you got to do.
Well, last Saturday, May 4th, Joel Hodgson himself came to Rochester, New York to perform his new one-man show called Riffing Myself. And I got to go and see him in person. And not only that, but they had a special thing where if you paid more for your ticket, there was a $20 general ticket for just the show, but if you paid $50, you got to go to a meet and greet with Joel after the show and be able to get to chat with him more and be able to get photos and stuff signed by him. And this was like a dream come true. It's funny because I didn't know this was happening until a week before, and I found out from my friend, my best friend James Irish, who I mentioned before. He's the one who helped me get into the show. He's a big fan, and his parents saw something in the paper about it, and they told him because he didn't know, and then he went online to and found out about it and immediately spun out the word like Joel's gonna be here, we gotta go. So it was like I couldn't believe it. It didn't really sink in just how exciting this was until I woke up that Saturday morning, and I had to go to work. It was funny because I had to work that day too. So and I was really worried because my job doing tech support remotely for people. I was worried that I'd get stuck on a call that may run past my end of my shift time, which happens pretty regularly. But thankfully I was able to take care of this last customer, and I got out because the show was at 8:00, and I got out at about 6:50. So it's like as soon as I was done, I just raced to the theater, and it was just. It's hard to describe just how exciting it was just getting to, this is the first time, I've met some celebrities before, but this was different because of my love for the show and, just like, wow, you getting to see Joel live and in person, it's like, especially since I missed out on Cinematic Titanic in the past. And so, this took place at probably those who may not be familiar with Rochester. There's a place called the George Eastman House, and probably George Eastman was the founder of Kodak Film, which and he was they preserved his home, and it's a museum, and also they do a lot of film preservation there. They have a film lab, like a lot of major films have been restored there, and they have like a archive, a lot of stuff, especially stuff going all the way back to Nitrate, which is pretty neat. And they have this theater called the Dryden Theater where they show lots of movies, both old and new. And so this theater was pretty good size. It was about like 400 people. You can seat about just over 400, and they just recently renovated. So this was the first time I'd gone there after the renovation. It was pretty nice, and so it was exciting. We got to sit down, and then we saw that the turnout was really good. I would say it was at somewhere with like 60 to 75% full. The theater was for the show, which is neat. And then we were me, James, and his cousin, a cousin of his, Sean, who was also a fan of the show. And so we were all sitting together. We all paid the $50 because it's like, why not? This is a once in a lifetime chance here. You never know when you're gonna get a chance to meet him again. So, and it was fun. We sat around with a lot of fellow fans of the show. The neat thing about it was the age range around us. We had people like our age, people in their 20s, and then like adults, from like 30s, 40s, 50s. So like the age range for fans of the show is actually pretty incredible now because of how old the show is. So it's like we had both the young and the old. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, this shows just how awesome that the show is, and just how it reaches across different generations, even long after it's been off the air. So, and we were chatting with some of the other fans there about just general chit chat to kill time, because we had like a 45-minute wait before the show started, because a lot of people got there early, and there was a line outside the theater, waiting to get in, and so we sat down, and then we were just chit chatting, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Joel. He just came down to the podium where he was going to talk, and he was getting all set up and everything. And I was like, oh my God, it's like it's Joel, it's Joel. And other people were like that too. They're like, oh, getting all like, starstruck. It was I never thought I'd be like that, but I was. So as for the show itself, for those out there who, this is a pretty new thing here, so I think only only a certain amount of people have gotten to see this yet. I think he just started doing this. But basically what the show is using basically a big giant slideshow. Joel pretty much covers his life story from his childhood all the way up to the creation of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And he talks about, growing up and all the things that influenced him, that led him on his life journey from wanting to do comedy, wanting to do magic, with working with puppets, and all the things that influenced him and where he went, going over everything, his career up through his comedy, and then going, of course, concentrating on all the stuff that influenced his ideas that led to the creation of the show. And it was really fun just to see this. I mean, because he had a lot of personal photographs. I mean, he had photos of him, not just of himself when he was younger, but of his family, of people that he knew, all kinds of. He showed a lot of his old business cards for when he started out, like when one of his first, it was I love the one that says like Joel Hodgin, comedian, magician, spy, because he really liked James Bond, and he got a nice like looking suit, so he was kind of like, he felt like he was like a James Bond, so he kind of threw a little bit of like I'm a spy into his comedy act, so it's pretty amusing.
His Agent J stuff back from SNL.
Some of that, yeah, and some other stuff that I'll get to when in a second, because there wasn't just pictures and artifacts. He also he had some videos in the slideshow as well. It was kind of interesting. It's like I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about. I mean, when he talked, like he goes right in the beginning. He talks about MST3K for a little bit, and he went over, where he got all the names for all the characters on the show. He was almost like quizzing us, like, okay, you guys know where I got the name for Dr. Clayton Forster from, and a bunch of people shout out, War of the Worlds, and he's like, that's right, and where he got the names for the robots, and there was a nice little bit where he talked about Joel Robinson was from the Robinsons from Lost in Space, which was one of his favorite TV shows when he was growing up. And there was a cute little bit where he had a stock photo of the Lost in Space cast, and he superimposed his head over Bill Mummy's. Stuff like that. And it was neat because just some of the personal stuff. I mean, he had a picture of a TV guide from when he was a kid in the late 60s. It had like Lucy on the cover, and we knew it was his because there was still the address label for the TV guide, and it was his father's name with their home address on it. And it was just like, wow. It's amazing. I don't know if he still had that TV guide, or it's like at some point he just took a picture of it, but that's the kind of stuff that he was showing, and really amusing, like, childhood photos. He had photos of all the places that were a part of his childhood, where he grew up, and showing where he went, like in Wisconsin and stuff like that. And let me see. It was neat what kind of like the influence. Like he loved magic. He wanted to do magic. He wanted to do all these things. Kind of just influenced him, and like it just kind of like all flowed together. And the the best part was just all the jokes that he was cracking during this. It's like, this wasn't just some straight up, this is my life. He was making, this was, it was that combined with the kind of humor that, Joel's known for. And, even poking fun at himself and stuff like that. Like, for example, he showed, like, these pictures of him, where he's, like, he's got one of the puppets he made, for like ventriloquism, and he's like, this was my grade school photo. Yes, I'm not joking. They allowed me to take that photo. They took the photo like that. I'm not just, stuff like that. One of the best ones was a photo taken of him in front of his house the day of his high school graduation, and he looked really nice. But then you look down and you see he's not wearing normal shoes. He's wearing these gigantic boots. And he's like, for those of you who are old enough, yes, those are Kiss boots. And yes, I wore them to my high school graduation. And he goes, and those are Kiss boots that I personally built myself. And everyone was just like cracking up. It's like, I was cracking up. I was like, oh my goodness, they were huge. If you ever go to the show and you see this photo, you'll see just how big these things were. And he wore them to his high school graduation. Let's see. And then he talked about going up into the 70s, how he started out. He did little parties for people in the area, and then after he went to college for a bit. One of the neat things that he talked about was that when he was in college, one of his teachers talked about putting stuff down in a journal, all your ideas, and he showed pictures of all these sketches that he did, of all these ideas he would get, and it's one of the coolest parts that led to later when he was talking about MST3K. He showed sketches that he drew before they started, putting the show together. Of the designs of the robots, of the Satellite Love set, really cool stuff. In fact, he has like an entire bookshelf in his home of all the journals that he's kept, all the journals that he's like doodled and taken notes in over the years, and he's like kept them, and it's just pretty neat. And let's see, he talked about it was fun with the magic stuff, because he would show these pictures from these catalogs about how to buy. You could, there was these catalogs where you could buy like magical tricks and stuff, like a kit to be able to levitate a person, or another kit where you could saw someone into pieces, and they were pretty expensive for the time. There was like, these are like several $100s and stuff like that. And so he talked about how since he couldn't afford these things, he looked in the catalog and he built these things himself. He would build his own stuff, and that's led to fiddling around with puppets and creating his own ventriloquist dummies. My favorite is he created a 2-headed ventriloquist dummy, which is kind of creepy. And he used it in his stand-up act a lot, especially during the 80s. And he talked about, breaking into the stand-up comedy, going out to L.A., and that's when he first showed a video. He showed a video of his performance on an HBO special in the early 80s. It was the upcoming young comedian special. And it was really cool because he was... the show was, I guess it was hosted by John Candy, because John Candy introduced Joel, and he basically was what his stand-up was like, and it was hilarious. I mean, everybody was cracking up. And the nice thing, after he was done with the video, Joel said to the audience, he goes, I really appreciate the fact that you guys really laughed and enjoyed that, even though that was over 30 years ago. It really means a lot to me that you still found all that my stand-up, my comedy like that really funny, which is a nice little touching moment. And the spy stuff came into his act where like he had all these gadgets like that would turn into a gun and stuff like this, and it's hard to describe it. I think this video is out there online if you can find it. It might be on YouTube. I'm not sure. And and just in general, if you want to see what Joel's stand-up was like, you can probably find some of this stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, there's a few videos of his stand-up on YouTube of him on Saturday Night Live and Letterman and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he talked about, that was the big time. He got on Letterman, he got on Saturday Night Live, and he was really enjoying it. And one of the cool stories was, I didn't know that, while he was on the comedy circuit, he became friends with Jerry Seinfeld. And in fact, Jerry thought so highly of Joel that he had Joel work as one of the writers on one of his HBO comedy specials in the late 80s, which I didn't know, so I thought was pretty cool. Which led to a really amusing... at first, I wasn't sure if he was serious or not, but I think he was joking. He said that when he came up for the idea of MST3K, he originally had the idea of having Jerry be the one trapped on the satellite of love. But then he joked, but of course I didn't know that Jerry was going to get his own TV show named after him 4 years from that moment. And besides, Jerry told me, he goes, you know what? I think it would work better if you played the main character and you were on the show. And he goes, and everything worked out for the best for both him and for me. So yeah, I think it was a joke, but it's like he was sort of like really serious that
that might have been serious. I don't know.
It's hard to say. I think it was both. It was probably he probably told Jerry about the idea, and I think maybe he was just exaggerating about him that he wanted Jerry to be the host and the main character and not him. So, but it was a really funny bit, and it was really cool hearing him talk about just the creation of the robots, which led to him talking about the concept of kit bashing, if people are familiar with that, which is the people who worked on the original Star Wars special effects. That's how they built the Star Destroyer and all the spaceships and everything. They took all these model kits and cannibalized them to create stuff, and he picked up on that, and that allowed him, and he was tinkering with creating stuff long before. He showed pictures of a lot of prototypes of the robots and stuff like that. It was just fantastic. And so then, he talked about just everything that came together for the creation of the show, making the puppets, the set, and led to the other cool little video he showed, which was an original TV spot that was aired on KTMA to promote the premiere of Mystery Science Theater 3000 Thanksgiving night, 1988, which was really cool. It was a really lengthy promo. It was over a minute, and it was it hyped how that Joel was this famous comedian that he'd been on Saturday Night Live and David Letterman, and showing just clips from stuff that they were filming, the clips from the Thunderbirds that they riffed, which are part of the lost episodes, and the green slime, which I think a lot of Misty fans out there are familiar about that. The unaired pilot where he riffed on the green slime. There was footage from that, so that was really cool to see that. And he made jokes about how Beeper, which was the original robot, which eventually was replaced by Tom Servo. And just joking about that and stuff, and that's kind of where it ended. It's like he just concentrated on his life from his childhood up to MST3K, and so once he was done with talking about the birth of the show, he was done. One of the cool thing he did before that was to add a little bit of personalization to this. He did a whole big joke about Rochester, New York. He did a whole new slideshow in kind of in this style, because he said his father liked to do slideshows when he was a kid. So he said, I'm going to do a slideshow about Rochester, New York for you in the style of my father. And he just threw out all these random old photographs and saying, this was various locations in Rochester. And for us who live here, we were just cracking up. It was a nice little, fun little personal joke that Joel did for us, which was kind of really cool. So
That's really neat.
yeah, it was. So once that was done, it took about just over it was just over an hour, the whole the main part of the show, and then after that he stopped and he did a little Q&A with the audience, and for a little bit. There was the usual kind of questions that he probably is used to getting. Of course, someone had to ask him, why did you leave the show? And he was very honest about it. He basically boiled it down to, him and Jim Allen had a falling out. They butted heads, and most of it was over. Jim was pushing really hard to make MST3K the movie, and Joel thought that that wasn't the way to go. And so he decided it was best to leave the show rather than keep fighting with Jim and kill the show.
Right.
It's like he didn't want to kill the show. He didn't want the issues that were going on between the two of them to ruin the show. So that's why he chose to leave, even though he did not want to leave. He said I loved I loved being on the show. I didn't want to go, but I felt that it was the right move in order to prevent the show from being ruined. Because of the clash that was going on between the two of them. And so that's the definitive answer for people, It's like, that's why Joel left. It basically came down to him and Jim Allen had different views on where to take the show. And he left for the good of the show. And he knew it was going to continue on. He trusted Mike and them to keep the show going, and he was right, of course. And but there was a funny little bit where this one person was asking a question, and he started to confuse him with Mike because he was asking him about something related to during the Mike era, and he goes, "Do you think I'm Mike? Are you saying that I'm Mike?" It's like he really gave the guy a hard time for like, and everyone was just cracking up, Let's see. I'm trying to remember some other ones that the people threw out there. Just kind of just general about like. There was one about. Oh yes. One person asked him about what experience he had about meeting filmmakers' reactions to their movies being riffed on. And he specifically talked about the story. Probably some fans have heard about this, but. After they did the Cave Dwellers episode, Miles O'Keefe himself contacted them and said that he had seen the episode and he thought it was absolutely hilarious. And so Joel actually went and met him at his house. He actually went out and met him, and he gave him a copy of the episode and stuff like that, and got to hang out with him for a bit. He said he said that was a really fun experience. So, So I always heard about that story. I didn't know if it was true, but Joel talking about it, I was like, okay, it actually did happen. It was great. Joel even made the lots of Keith reference. So he even threw out some of the O'Keefe jokes while he was talking about it, which is great.
Kilometers of Keith.
Yes, lots of Keith. And so he did that for a little bit, and that ended the regular show for people who only paid to see the main show. And so us who paid for the extra to hang out with him for the personal meet and greet, we were seated up in the front in the first two rows. And so everybody else exited, and then we were taken to another room, a smaller room that was used for like private screenings at the theater. And so we just hung out with Joel and chatted. He did a whole nother Q&A with us for like another half an hour, which was awesome. And there were some really good questions. He talked about ideas about the riffing, working on how he, why he ended up on Freaks and Geeks. He's friends with Judd Apatow, and that's why he did that. And let's see, he someone asked him, what's his favorite episode, and he's like, he didn't hesitate. I Accuse My Parents is Joel's favorite episode. He thinks that the riffing, the skits, the everything in that episode gels for him. That's why he's very fond of it. And uh, I got to ask him a question, which was pretty awesome. I asked him about Cinematic Titanic to kind of change stuff because most of the stuff was like MST3K, and I asked him, why they were deciding to end Cinematic Titanic this year, and I also asked him. I also threw in if they're going to release any more DVDs. He told me that they're not. He's not really sure if they're going to be able to release any more DVDs. So don't hold your breath on that. From what Joel was saying. But the cool thing was he talked about why they decided to end Cinematic Titanic, and basically he said that when they originally decided to do it, they only planned on doing it for 5 years.
Mm.
Okay, they had planned that this was only gonna be done for a limited amount of time, and at this time they feel that they've done everything they wanted to accomplish with Cinematic Titanic. They've gotten to go a lot of places around the country they've never been to. It's been a success. They've had a lot of fun, but in the end, they're away from their families. And Joel was talking about how he loved doing Cinematic Titanic, but it was taking time away from his wife and his kids, and he wanted to spend more time with his family. And the other people wanted to do the same thing, and also had other projects in mind. So they felt that it was the right time to bring Cinematic Titanic to an end. And but that doesn't mean, of course, that they're not going to be doing anything. Obviously, everybody else has their own plans, and Joel was talking about he's going to be doing the Riffing Myself for a while too. He's going to be going around the country doing that, and he's also said he's got some other ideas, stuff that he's going on. So he's still going to be busy, but at the same time, he's also going to be able to spend more time with his family, which is completely understandable, And one person asked him about his kids, and he's like, no, I've made a decision not to talk about my kids until they're old enough, And one person even asked him, he even joked, what do your kids think of Mystery Science Theater 3000? And he's like, oh, they don't give a crap about that,
That's something Daddy did a long time ago.
Oh yeah. There was a nice one where he was talking about riffing, and you were talking. It was funny you mentioned earlier. We were talking about it's hard to riff on a comedy, and he brought up Catalina Caper as an example of when he was talking about how did they come? Because one person asked, how did it come about that you chose which movies you did, and what was your thought process in coming up with riffing jokes and stuff like that? And he really went in depth about how they picked the movies they chose and the process that they went through to do the riffing. And it's just really cool hearing him talk about how they would just sit down and just brainstorm, and sometimes that they would come up with jokes that they knew worked better for certain people. Like, okay, this line, Crow should say this line, and oh, okay, I think this one would work better if Servo said this, stuff like that. And he mentioned how there were certain movies that one of the best movies are movies that have pauses in between the dialogue so that they can insert jokes inside. He goes, they really avoided movies where there was narration as much as possible because that made it hard to riff, because they had to riff over the narration, and so it kind of it messes with the movie, because they wanted to see people. They also wanted people to watch the movie as well while they're listening to the jokes, so they could try if it's possible to even follow, because as many know, some movies they don't what plot if you're watching Manos or Monster
There's a
Go-Go.
script?
Yeah, is there a script really? And so it was really neat hearing him talk about that, just the kind of what they were looking for and how everything came together. It was really nice, peek behind the curtain that most fans don't get to see. And so that lasted a good half an hour, and then after that it was done. Everyone got to take turns getting something signed by him, and then getting their picture taken with him. And a lot of people brought a lot of most people had DVDs with them from Shout Factory. Oh, by the way, Joel really likes Shout Factory. He gave a big shout out to them. He at one point, because he when talking about episodes, he goes, hey, aren't the guys at Shout Factory doing just an awesome job with releasing the episodes on the DVDs? And everyone just like went like, hollered, hooped and hollered. So so Joel, as far as he's concerned, Shout Factory he gives Shout Factory 2 thumbs up for what they've been doing with the DVDs, which was really nice to hear. And so,
awesome.
Yeah, it is. The usual suspects there. A lot of people had copies of Manos. A couple people, including my friend James, had a copy of The Crawling Eye from Volume 17 to sign. I decided to go with a little bit different. I already knew Joel loved I Accused My Parents. That was his favorite episode. And I had a copy of it, and so I got my copy of I Accused My Parents signed by Joel, which is pretty awesome. Yep. So that's one of my most prized possessions now. And I also got my picture taken with him, and the picture of me, it's like me and Joel is like my Facebook profile picture now. So for people who know me on Facebook, when they bring up my profile on Facebook, they will see me next to Joel, which is pretty awesome. If for those who will see the picture, I took that picture along with a lot of other pictures. I put them on my Facebook page, and it is made public. So if you search for my name on Facebook, you will be able to view the pictures. I didn't make them private, so that way other fans who don't know me personally, they don't have to, friend me. Be forced to friend me on Facebook to be able to see the pictures, because I wanted other people to just be able to see the pictures, because it was just an absolutely awesome experience that I wanted to share with other fans, and hopefully other fans will get the chance to that Joel will come near them to do Riffing Myself, and they'll be able to get to see the show for themselves. And one of the pictures is the signed copy of my DVD. I threw that in there as well, just for fun.
And I will be posting a link to the pictures in the show notes for the episode, so you can just click on there, and click on there, and it'll take you straight to the album on Facebook if you have Facebook.
Yep. I also think we'll try to get some of the photos put onto the website as well. You said, right?
Yeah, I can try and get them posted onto the MSTieCast Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
So that if for some reason the personal album doesn't work, I can have them on there and they will be public.
Mm-hmm. So, overall, this was just an absolutely mind-blowing, amazing experience to see Joel in person, to see him do the Riffing Myself. If you get to go, you're not going to be disappointed. You'll have a absolutely wonderful time. He's got some great jokes, stuff that there's other stuff that I could have gone over, but I don't want to give too much away, so that the whole experience is not ruined. There's a lot of other cool stuff that I left out, and jokes and stuff that he did, and so that way you'll get to experience them for yourself, hopefully, at some point. And Joel is just he's wonderful in person. You could tell that he really loves the fans, and he loves hanging out with the fans and interacting with the fans, and he's just absolutely the nicest person in person, and so personable, and he had just as much fun talking and hanging out with us as we did with him, which is beyond awesome. So I'm just so lucky that I was able to get this, to be able to go see the show, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully other people will too. It was awesome.
Right on. I would love if Joel came to a place near here, like to the Fabulous Fox here in Atlanta, somewhere near here. I would pay just about anything to go see Joel live.
Mm-hmm.
I would love if one of the final Cinematic Titanics would come here as well.
Yeah, and he even made reference to maybe that Cinematic Titanic might come to Rochester, so everyone was just like keeping their fingers crossed that maybe the George Eves house might invite him and CT to come do a show before they hang up their hats for good for that, and then close the doors on Cinematic Titanic. So we'll have to wait and see, because he obviously likes Rochester a lot. He really had fun being here. He even talked about how he enjoyed having lunch, dinosaur barbecue for lunch, which is a big thing around here. That got a lot of hoot and hollers from people. It's like, I had dinosaur barbecue for lunch. It was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. So, so keep an eye out online. Probably through either Cinematic Titanic's website, which is still up and functioning, and probably Joel's own personal website. And keep an eye out for where he's taking Riffing Myself next, and hopefully he will be coming near and close to you, you people out there. So that's all I gotta say about that.
All right, awesome. Well, we are just about out of time, so I'm just going to have us do the sign off. For Joshua McLeod, who is not here, I'm Toby Bilbius.
And I'm Justin Toner.
And this has been the MSTieCast. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye. We'll leave the light on for you.
Absolutely.
Now, poopy.